Hey there, fourth grade. We've spent a few days classifying triangles in class, and I just want to kind of wrap it up and get some things written down and kind of tie it all together today. This is going to be your classifying triangles wrap up, so open up your notebook, mark this as your next page, and close it up and think with me. Full concentration until we get to the we do. Alright, so we learned how to classify triangles two ways through our class activities. The first way was by their angles. So we learned there's three types of triangles when it comes to angles. So they were this. They were right, obtuse, and acute. So right triangles have a right angle. It's not possible to have more than one in a triangle. Obtuse angles have an I guess I should say, an obtuse angle. And acute triangles have only acute angles. So let me show you a few. I've got some triangles printed out. So if it has a right angle, it's a right triangle. If it has an obtuse angle, it's an obtuse triangle. If it doesn't have either of those and all three angles are acute, then it's an acute triangle. So here's some triangles. So if I were to look at, say, this one first. So this triangle has an obtuse angle right there, way more than 90 degrees. So that would be an obtuse triangle because it has an obtuse angle. Let me get a marker here and put those on the table. There we go, so that's obtuse. Let's see, this one, hard to tell. I think that is probably a right angle. Let me get a square edge and see. That looks like potentially a right angle. Let's see. I don't know, that is awfully close. Yeah, it looks from here like it probably is a right angle right there. So I'm going to put that as a right. Don't be tricked. Sometimes the right angle is not at the bottom, like that. You know, it could be at the top, still counts as a right triangle. Let me get that thing out of the way. And then there are some triangles, where you can see it though. And then there are triangles like this one, where all three angles are acute. That's an acute triangle. Okay? And I could keep doing more. That's obtuse. That I can't tell if that's right. Rights can be hard to tell. Don't think an angle is really a right angle. I think probably might be a little off. Pretty close though. Yeah, right angle, and let's see, here's another acute. Is it? Yeah. That's another acute triangle, all three acute angles. Okay? So that's how you classify triangles by their angles. We also classified them by their sides too. So these are some vocab words that are a little harder to remember. Equilateral. Equa means same. Lat means sides. So equilateral triangles have three, we say, congruent or equal sides. All three sides are the same length. Then there are isosceles. I-S-O-S-C-E-L-E-S, I believe. Isosceles triangles have two congruent sides. And scalene triangles have no congruent sides. So that's it. So it's just about how many sides match. Equilateral they all match. Isosceles 2, scalene none. So if I look at a few, then I'll do equilateral. Oh, you can't see that, can you? Equilateral, isosceles, scalene. And we just start to look. So like this one, I believe I'd have to get a ruler to be certain. I believe all three of these sides appear to be the same length. So I would probably say that that's an equilateral triangle. This one, that's a classic scalene. All three sides are obviously different lengths, none the same. And here's a isosceles triangle. This side is really long. These two sides seem to match and to be a little shorter, so that's an isosceles triangle. This, I'm going to guess that's also an isosceles. It looks to me like that side's long. Those two sides are shorter, but match. Let's see, this, probably a scale, it might be. I have to measure for sure. I think on this one, this side's the longest. This side I think is shorter than this side. And that side's the shortest. So that'd be a scalene. And I don't know if I have another equilateral in my pile. Let's see. How about that one? Is that one? Yeah, that's also an equilateral. All three sides the same. Okay? And we'll do one more when we get to the we do. But let's go to the we do now, and we'll do all three. We'll do both at the same time there. All right. So for your notes, make sure you've written down. I want you to know those words. So if we classify by angle, they can be right, obtuse, or acute. Right has a right angle. Obtuse has an obtuse angle. And acute has all acute angles. And we may want to draw one for each example. So usually the right triangle, usually it's drawn where you can see the right angle down at the bottom. Doesn't have to be though. But something like that. That's a right triangle. Lots of times, sometimes it's easiest for me to draw an obtuse triangle like a right, where one side's flat on the bottom, and I just make sure I have an obtuse angle, like that. And then an acute, just make sure they're all acute. I don't know if I did it there, didn't I? Let me try again to be sure. About this way. That's acute for sure. Acute, acute, acute. So those are good examples of all three, so you have one. Okay. If we classify by sides, then we have equilateral, all three sides congruent. We can have isosceles, two sides congruent, or we can have scalene, no sides congruent. And again, could be a good idea to draw. Each equilaterals always look the same. They can change their size, but they always have this kind of look, like the classic triangle, where all three angles are the same and all three sides are the same. Isosceles usually look like one of two things. They either are really long, with a big obtuse angle at the top, like that, and these two sides are the same. By the way, a lot of times in drawings, they'll tell you sides are congruent like this. They'll put a little mark on them. So that's a really common isosceles triangle. And there's also like the short bottom, short base, really tall isosceles triangles too are very common. Those are both isosceles. And then scalene's sort of like none of the above, so something like that. No sides are the same. All right. And so last but not least, what's really important is to be able to do both. So I'm going to show you some examples. And we usually classify triangles by both. We'll say, well, this is right and it's isosceles, or this is right and it's also scalene, or something like that. So let's go back to some of my drawings for your examples here. Draw these with me. But like, for instance, if I look at this one, if I look at the angles, it's acute, acute, acute. And if I look at the sides, it's congruent, congruent, congruent. So I would say that this is an acute equilateral triangle. Right, I'm going to say that it's both. It's an acute triangle by its angles. It's an equilateral triangle by its sides. So it's an acute equilateral triangle. If I look at this one, if I look at the angles, I see an obtuse angle up here. So it's an obtuse triangle. And if I look at the sides, it looks like this side and this side match, and this side is longer. So if two sides are congruent, then it is an isosceles triangle. So that is an obtuse isosceles triangle. And let's see, let's find one more to do. How about eeny, meeny, miny? Having a hard time deciding. How about this one? So when I look at that one, I see an obtuse angle at the top. I don't believe any sides are congruent, so I would call that an obtuse scalene triangle. It is both. All right. And that is how you classify triangles, by their angles and by their sides. Hopefully after a few days, this is a comfortable thing for you to do. There's no real getting around learning some of these vocabulary words, especially the sides. You know, just please make sure you take the time to know the word equilateral, isosceles, and scalene, which one's which, because it's easy to forget which one's which. And if you do, then it's easy to miss a question. So make sure you take the time to learn that vocab. Once you feel like you've got a good handle on this, you are all set. Make sure you write down your we-dos and your vocab, and I'll see you tomorrow.